Well, there's more bad news for the legacy news media, which is already suffering a terminal distrust prognosis. A new survey suggests that trust in the news media is sinking to a new low. But the large survey of New Zealanders also suggests that ratepayers are also sick of funding woke things. So there's two warnings in this episode, one for the legacy media and one for councils pushing leftist and woke views. Let's check it out. So you probably haven't heard of it, but it's the 2024 Quality of Life Survey. It's a collaborative local government research project which is run by Ipsos, which is a large international polling company, and it's polling which is done for councils. And the primary objective of the survey is to measure residents' perceptions of aspects of living in larger urban areas. So the survey provides data for councils to use as part of their planning. But it also contributes to public knowledge and research on quality of life issues in New Zealand. Now, the Quality of Life survey was first conducted in 2003, then in 2004, and every 2 years since. The number of councils that participate in this have varied each time, but 9 councils participated in the 2024 Quality of Life survey: Auckland, Hamilton, Tauranga, Hutt City, Porirua, Wellington, Christchurch, Dunedin, and the Waikato Regional Council. So last year, a total of just under 7,000 respondents aged 18 years and over completed the Quality of Life survey. So that's a significant survey. What's also noteworthy is that it doesn't include a lot of the more rural areas in New Zealand. It's the major cities. So I would say that this survey would already be slightly left bias or liberal bias, being the bigger cities like Dunedin, Wellington, Auckland, which actually makes the results even more astounding. So let's have a look at some of the general results before we touch on the trust in media issue. And firstly, it found that people, surprisingly, want their councils to fix traffic, parking, rubbish, begging and homelessness issues, antisocial behaviour, vandalism and safety. These are the core issues, not the woke social engineering stuff like rainbow crossings, pride parades, LGBT flags hanging around streets, DEI meetings for staff, and drag queens story hour in council libraries. And despite the hysterics of the media and politicians around climate alarmism, the general public aren't feeling the panic. In 2020, according to this survey, just under half of us worried about the impacts of climate change. That is now down to a third. Yep, 100% of the media are panicking about climate change, as are the government and the opposition, it seems, but the general public, nope, bigger things to think about. Maybe the government should rethink their blind adherence to the ineffectual and unnecessary Paris Accord. And safety in public was also a big issue for the survey respondents. Around 2 in 3 respondents were concerned around people begging and sleeping on the streets, alcohol and drug problems in public, and generally feeling unsafe. Half of the respondents on the right there were concerned about discrimination and racism, but half weren't. So it seems pretty clear that it seems like ratepayers want councils to stick to their core business. You know, roads, decent footpaths, sewage, rubbish collection, stuff we pay our rates for. Now, let me give you a quick example of how councils push their own agenda. You might remember the media celebrating a rainbow crossing being painted in downtown Tauranga at the end of last year. Yep, with all the issues that Tauranga Council could be focusing on, they decided that your sexuality and gender identity is a defining one for ratepayers to be concerned about at the moment. Tauranga ratepayers, think about that for a moment as you tackle the traffic mayhem around the city and note the shops for lease in Devonport Road where this rainbow crossing has been placed. Now, according to Official Information Act documents obtained by Family First, here's the feedback the council got from businesses to waste money on this woke virtue signalling illegal road painting. Council staff went around and visited approximately 67 businesses and asked for feedback. 32 businesses were in support, which is less than half. 17 businesses were ambivalent. In other words, they were more interested in surviving financially. Six businesses were opposed, which is good, and 12 businesses had no specific feedback. I mean, they probably thought, why is the council even talking about this rubbish? But here's the key bit. Council staff talked to whoever was in the business at the time of the visit, and not necessarily the business owner or the landlord. You know, where's the worker with the blue hair? They'll say what we want them to say. Now, they also sent out a letter to 42 businesses. A hard copy newsletter containing the same text was distributed to the city centre businesses at about the same time. Guess how much feedback they got about the Rainbow Crossing as a direct result of sending all those emails and hard copy newsletters printed out and distributed to all businesses in the CBD. None. Not a single response. Yeah, rainbow crossings are not the priority of normal people who just want to get on with business and make the city a thriving business place. But in a stunning and in-depth piece of consultancy by Tauranga Council, the Official Information Act information we receive admitted, quote, one council staff member reported 2 positive comments from business owners on an ad hoc basis from recent discussions on other topics. Both business owners felt that the crossing increased the fun and vibrancy in the city centre and that we are one community, end quote. Now, in contrast, a petition with almost 3,000 signatures opposing the crossing was ignored by the councillors. But according to the New Zealand Herald, the crossing had massive support. The council shared photos of the crossing in an Instagram post. The post said the council was thrilled to unveil our brand new crossing, celebrating love, inclusivity and diversity in our beautiful city. Well, from the page's 1,067 followers, it had gained 134 likes. Impressive. Unfortunately, Devonport Road businesses are more interested in surviving than virtue signalling their sexuality, gender and diversity, as we all are. So Tauranga Council, Gisborne Council and Auckland Council with their rainbow crossings aren't listening to ratepayers, but it is time they focused on the basics of good local council governments: traffic, parking, rubbish, sewage, water and safety issues. But it's not only councillors who seem to be deaf. The media are refusing to listen to the critics also. Now let me just remind you of how bad things had got before I show you how bad it's going to get. At the beginning of last year, the 5th report about trust in news was produced by the AUT Research Centre for Journalism, Media and Democracy in collaboration with the Reuters Institute for the Study of Journalism. It's a survey of 46 countries. And in 2020, 53% of New Zealanders trusted the news in general. In 2024, that figure had plummeted to 33% trust. In 5 years, general trust in the news had fallen 20 percentage points. Just 1 in 3 New Zealanders trust the news media. And internationally, we're competing with the UK and the US for the lowest levels of trust. Now, reasons not to trust the news, here's the top 4. They've all increased since the previous year's report. They said the reporting in the news is biased and not balanced. The news is too much a result of the political leaning of the newsroom. The news is too opinionated and lacks factual information. And there is a lack of transparency in the way the news media operates. And notice the 5th one there. 61% say government financial support for the media in New Zealand means you cannot trust journalists to hold the government to account. About 84% of respondents were concerned about fake news. About 92% of respondents were concerned about poor journalism. And poor journalism was defined as making factual mistakes, dumbed down stories, and misleading headlines and clickbait. 96% of respondents, almost all of us, were concerned about, quote, stories where facts are spun or twisted to push a particular agenda, end quote. Yeah, damning. Last October, a new survey by academics from Victoria University and the University of Otago was reported with an accompanying op-ed by the authors in eveningreport.nz. And they found that 60% of survey participants reported, where's the graph? Reported that they sometimes, often or almost always avoid the news. Now, if you add in the really avoid it, 81% avoid it to some extent on that graph there. But this total of 60% is higher than any other national figure reported in other studies, with Greece and Bulgaria the next highest at 57%, Argentina at 46%. Japan has the lowest rates of news avoidance, 11%, followed by Taiwan and Denmark. Now, the average news avoidance across the 46 countries, right across the board, was 32.6. The average, we're almost double that amount of news avoidance. So we have some of the highest rates of news avoidance in the world. But here's two more recent examples of just how low our trust in the media has sunk. Now, the first one was reported by a very good website, thefacts.nz. And they were reporting about the Human Rights Commission, who had recently released new Horizon research on treaty trust. And who do we trust and not trust for reliable information on the Treaty of Waitangi and the associated Treaty Principles Bill? Now, they surveyed at the end of 2023 and then again at the end of last year in the heat of the Treaty Principles Bill being introduced into Parliament and the associated hikoi. Now, remember, this is a survey by the Human Rights Commission, who many would argue is a fairly leftist organisation, although there seems to be some changes afoot there. Only 13%, 13% of us trust English language news media to provide us with accurate information about the treaty. It's 16% for Māori language news media. So that's where we're getting all our information from, is through the media and some politicians as well. But 87% of us are suspicious of that information. This is shocking. As you can see, politicians don't fare much better either, and neither do government departments. Only 15% of us trust government departments, 10% MPs and 8% political parties. Up the top, the National Library of New Zealand, the Waitangi Tribunal, the Human Rights Commission, and podcasts, maybe McBlog, and history books on the treaty are more trusted. But even then, if you look, none of them are above the 50% trust mark. No organisation is trusted by more than 50% of the population on the treaty issue. And perhaps that's why everyone is talking past each other in this current debate. But 13% of the news media. Now, look, that's on a single controversial issue, no doubt about it. Perhaps we're all just very suspicious when the legacy news media report on the treaty issue. Well, hang on a minute. Let's look at the Ipsos report for the councils, which also asked about trust in institutions. And it found strong trust in, up the top there, police, scientists, and some trust in education, health, and justice. But low trust in politicians, both local body politicians, maybe because of all the rainbow crossings, and members of parliament. But guess who is at the bottom? Yep, you guessed it, the news media. And this is not just distrust on one issue like the treaty coverage, but in general. It's this level of distrust that suggests that the AUT report from last year, which shocked everyone with a low level of trust at 33%, may actually be far lower this year. This larger and more recent poll shows that just 27% of Kiwis have some level of trust for the news media. Just under half of us, 48%, have various levels of distrust, with the remaining 25% sitting on the fence. And it's the downward trend that should be freaking out our news organisations, but incredibly, they're just digging down. What they're actually doing is digging their own grave. And they seem to be the only ones who can't see that. They refuse to report the news in a balanced way, which allows the viewer to come to their own conclusion. Instead, they push their own view, bias, and narrative, and we can all see it. 33% trust this time last year with the AUT study, around 15% on specifically the treaty issue, but 27% trust on a large survey near the end of last year. Now, the next AUT survey will be out very soon. People will be watching that one. We'll let you know as soon as it's published. It may well be the obituary for the news media in New Zealand, which is now on life support.